Hey everybody, Dimitri here with Serg Supply, and today we are doing the pre-wiring for the Sprinter 144 van conversion. Let's get started.
Audio Jungle.
Okay, so before we begin, I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing today. This is arguably the worst part of the build process, not because it's difficult. It really is not difficult. It's not very complicated, but this is the part where the most small details are missed that you have to go back and do later. What that looks like realistically is ripping down all of your wall panels and your ceiling panels just to add another wire. It's a nightmare. You don't want to do that. So as you prepare for this part, make sure you've got everything measured out the way you need. If you bought one of our wiring kits, the length should be good to go. If you need other wires made, I will have a link in the description below for some of our other wiring resources. But in general, the goal here is to be well prepared, feed all the wires properly, make sure you check everything 10 times before you put anything else up and move to the next steps, and ultimately just run things safely. So in the video, we will go over the following. There will be DC-DC charging from the alternator. There'll be shore power, solar. We're running a separate gland for our roof rack lights. We're going to be doing our puck light wiring, max air fan wiring, 48 volt AC wiring. There's going to be reading lights. Our dimmer kit's going to go on one of the walls. We're going to wire for that, as well as the 110 volt GFCI protected outlets. So let me show you inside the van. I'm going to kind of show you how we're staging things, and we'll start right with the worst of it, the DC-DC charging. Here's all of our wiring staged out. This is part of the pre-wiring kit from our website. This is everything from max air fans to outlets, and then we have our DC-DC solar and shore right there. I want to quickly show you where we put things and why we do them. Number one, the shore power is going to live underneath this bumper cover. I do not like making holes inside of the van, so I will show you where we safely route those wires up into here. Number two, DC charging, is going to be routing through the boot down there. It'll make more sense later in the video. And then number three, our solar, which is going to come out from the ceiling. We're going to put a gland in today, run it back and go through that rear channel all the way down. And our power system is going to live in this lovely area. So the goal is to get everything there, except of course for our dimmer, which will live right here in the wall panel. So this is one of the wires for the ceiling puck lights. We kind of already ran over the ceiling as we've done that in a previous video. It's going to all terminate at this dimmer here. First things first, we're going to take this seat off. This is the factory seat. It is not a swivel. If you've got a newer Sprinter, it's likely going to be this socket size. See if I can get this in focus here. Come on, there we go. It's Echo 12. It looks kind of like a star bit. Make sure you get the right bit for the job. And we're going to remove all four of these guys here. To get to them, it's not going to be that loose, by the way. I already kind of pre-loosened this with the socket wrench. To get to all four of them, you're going to slide the seat forward for the back two, slide it back for the front two. And one thing to be careful of here, all right? This cable right here is for the sensor in the passenger seat. Do not ever unplug this. It's a nightmare. You're going to have to go back to Mercedes and have them recalibrate your computer for that. Luckily, our cable is long enough, so when we tip the seat back, we're just going to set it on its back right here on the floor behind, and it will not be long enough to rip or damage that cable. Your cable may not be long enough, so be careful. If you need to just tip it back onto something, have that set up before you get into this. Moving right along, we're going to take this little cover off. This is a T20 torque socket. It's just these two bolts right here. If you don't have this socket sitting around handy, it's worth noting that you will have this size and the battery tray cover underneath that mat on the passenger side. So if you don't have the tool, that's okay. Mercedes comes with a nice fancy screwdriver. You can toss these off to the side. And I apologize for the lighting if it's a little dark. It's kind of grim back here with lighting. But once this mat is out, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Now, we're not actually going to wire this to the battery, but a lot of electrical systems do go to the battery, and I wanted to show you that just in case. The important part is going to be this track here. So this white track actually goes back in and into this seat base on the driver's side, and it also goes into the passenger side. So if you're doing a power system that requires going to this battery, that's how you're going to do it. These are T25s right here. You don't want to take them off all the way, just loosen them a little, slide the tray down and pop it out. That's not where we're going to work today. We actually only need to be inside of here. Now to get this part done for our system, the Victron system, we're going to the alternator, and the way we're going to do that is going to be going underneath the vehicle through the boot that's underneath this guy here. So before you mess with anything here, see if I can get this for you guys. Bam, this thing right here is a cover. Pop that cover off. There is a factory plug there where if you press the button from on top and you pull it off, it disconnects all of the power so you don't risk shorting or damaging something in your vehicle. Once that's off, you've got two 10mm bolts to take out. One is right here on this side. See if I can get you guys in there to see that. There you go. And then the other one is in the back. This one's probably harder to see. Don't worry so much about fetching them. This front nut might actually, it's not a bolt, it's a nut. This one might come loose. You'll have to keep an eye on that one. This one's sitting inside of a little tray, so we kind of just leave it alone. I'll take these off and show you what we do from there. Next step is to remove this pillar right here. There's going to be a Torx bit on the bottom, a socket for the seat belt, and this guy up here. So there it is. Take off this rubber cover, give it a little massaging, and then you've got that T20 on here. See if I can get this in the shot for you guys. Voila, pull that off and save all this. You do not want to use it, or you don't want to lose it, rather. I believe this is a 17mm socket, but I will confirm that with you, and then I'll let you guys know what this is down below. We're feeding our DC-DC charging. It's going to start here, run through the wall, go through the seat pillar, under the seat, down into the boot. But to make things easier, we're going to feed it through the grommet first. So we'll pull this through. See if I get a better angle here for you guys. It is a very tight fit. But once that's out, we're going to run it through here. Quick note, while you're here, anywhere that wire is going to touch bare metal, put some trim lock on. We mentioned it in a previous video. It's very cheap and inexpensive. Reason being, things vibrate, they slide. Don't want to ruin your wires. And now we'll feed it retroactively back through here. And as far as slack, leave quite a bit back here. It's always easier to have slack back here than underneath the van out there. So that's good. We're going to leave it right there. And we're going to continue on feeding. Now let me just visually walk you through this before we do it. We're going to go over here, over the top. And then inside of this wall, there are pockets that will give you access to this area right here. You don't want the wiring to run over this where the seatbelt mounts. That is no bueno, but you have plenty of real estate to run it around. So the goal here for us is to come out of this big opening, run it down underneath that rubber mat into, see if I can get that, this channel right here under the seat base. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, we are under the vehicle now. This is the rubber boot in question. If you're curious about orientation, that's the front of the van, that's the back of the van, this is the passenger side, and that is the driver's side. So there is a zip tie on here right out of the factory. I don't know if you guys can see it right here. I'm going to use some side cutters and snip that thing off. Make sure you have a long zip tie to replace this later. Once that zip tie is cut, you can pull that thing off and discard it. This right here is where our wire is going to come out of. Now, where we tie into is actually further this way. On older Sprinters, there's actually a tying point very close to this spot, but we don't have the marine grade breaker that we're going to put underneath the van just yet. So I'm just going to bundle these up and zip tie them. But as far as wire pass through, this is where it's going to go. Okay, here we are above the van. This is the section that we're going to move out of the way. Once you get those two nuts off, you should be able to just lift and move it. And let me pick you guys up. Sorry if the shot gets weird here. All right, there is our boot. There is a rat's nest of wires going through. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it visible here, but I have Ivan underneath with a flashlight. You see that light glimmering there? That's the boot from the underside. We're going to shove these wires down into that gap and bundle them up underneath for us to install later, and then we're going to put everything back, and we're just about wrapped up with feeding the DC-DC charging wire. Okay, we're back at the back of the van. We fed the DC-DC wire. We've also taken the time to run this S-bar heater wire down there through the same channel, and I want to show you what we're doing here. This little gutter here is where it's very convenient in the Sprinters, and actually, I wonder if you guys can, no, I probably can't see it from here, but this is where we're going to put two grommets. One of them will be for our shore power. The other one will be for our main grounding cable. Let me crawl under the van real quick and show you what we got cooking there. Bear with me, folks. Okay, that's, and slowly, here we go. Okay, we're under the van. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, so I apologize for the weird angle. This bumper section here, with that pocket inside, that's where we're going to be putting our shore plug. I like them out of the way. These are waterproof, so they'll do nicely here. I really don't like putting holes in the metal, and we're going to run that cable up into this guy here. Now, let me get a little to the side and attempt to show you guys what I'm looking at there. Man, this camera's really struggling. Bear with me. There it is. Okay, this cap right here pops right off. We're going to put grommets in this guy, and our shore cable will come out of here, as well as our grounding cable. You don't want to use the grommet up front because it's actually for drainage. This is kind of a gutter for drainage, so you definitely don't want your wires to live at the bottom of it because water might run through it if, you know, worst case. And our grounding cable, we're actually going to grind down and put a very large grounding point inside of this beam right here because we want our power system grounded to the vehicle itself. Here we are under the van. I have my shore power plug right here. Hopefully the lighting works for you guys, but this is where I like to put these things. I like for them to live in here in this bumper socket where they're out of the way, they're barely visible, and it's just a nice place to put it. So I'm going to do this in front of you guys live. Whether I screw up or do it right will be up to me here, but you guys get to watch. All right, happy with that. In case you're curious, this is a NOCO shore power plug. We just spliced in our own wiring here. We actually connected them independently and then shrink wrap over each wire, and then we loomed it and then did heat shrink over that. We really want this to be waterproof, so kind of go above and beyond there. Now, let's feed this over. This is not a bad spot to put trim lock, by the way, if you've got it. I'm just gonna let this hang for now. Actually, you know what? Let's just do the install. We pull this through all the way. And we'll take a look here. See if we can get lucky. Ooh, that is a very snug fit. Okay, I'm gonna take this boot off right here and refeed with the rubber seal, but for the sake of getting this done, let's circle back to this guy here. Let's take this screwdriver, try to get this cap off so I can show you what's cooking. Here it is. There is our access point to where we put those grommets. I fed a wire through here. There it is. My lucky day. We're going to tie this cable to this wire. I'm probably just going to use this gaffer's tape here. Electrical tape is cool and good and well, but boy, do I hate getting that sticky tape off after, especially if you feed it through a hole and it gets all rolled over itself. It's really no fun. But this is, there's not a whole lot of things obstructing the path here, so this should be nice and easy. I'll be able to pull it right out the top. Yeah, there's no chance I'll be able to get to that from under here. So if you've got some extra wire to fish through, this is a good trick. I'm going to jump up. I'll leave you guys rolling. I'm going to jump up there and try to pull this wire through real quick. See if I have any luck. Actually, hold the phone. First mistake of the day. Got to feed it through this guy first. So, let me swap these hole saws. Hole saw number one. Okie dokie. Let's take this off if we're lucky. Okay, I may have to get out to do this on a workbench. I'm going to take this cap here. I'm going to put a hole in it so then I can put this grommet into the cap. I'm going to feed my wire through there. So I kind of screwed up tying this in a little too early when I have to go and feed it all through here anyway. So I'm going to make this hole. I'll be right back, folks. Okay, here we are. Hole's made. There we go. Grommet's ready. I think I used 1.5 inches. You can probably do something smaller if you're just doing shore, but I'm going to have a ground cable run through here as well. So I need that extra space, and it is a big boy. I think it's a 2-aught, but all that in another video. There we go. Let's feed this through here and just kind of pop it back in place. If we're lucky, we'll get it in first try. If not, I'll have to do a bunch of prying, but let's see how we go. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, Going back to here. Let's get our plug back in. And there's that gaffer's tape that I just ripped. I've been kind of lazy. Take this off. Come on. Come on. See, this is pretty bad with this tape, but I promise you it's so much worse with electrical tape. Okay. I'm going to pull these wires through, try to keep the video a little short here, and shoot this in, pull them through, pull it out the top, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when I'm done. There she is. Really pretty. Nice and tucked away. And let's tilt this down, see if I can show you. There we go. This is exactly how we want it. Invisible, no holes in the side of the van. Got a nice marine grade plug. Some of you may say, hey, this is a really stupid idea putting this underneath the vehicle. It's going to get exposed to water. To which I say, maybe you're right, but a plug on the side of the vehicle is also going to get exposed to water. And both of these have rubber seals to contain them. And they don't carry active current because they're for charging. They're not discharging anything. So yeah, I get it. This may not be a good call for everybody, but this is where we put them. This is where we love to put them, and we're going to continue putting them here unless somebody has something much better that doesn't involve putting holes in the side. So now that we're done with shore power, let's mosey on up on the roof and get solar out of the way. Here we are on top of the roof. I put a nice little piece of plywood down on the rack so I don't keep denting the dang thing. And I want to talk to you guys about solar, what I'm doing up here. This is the gland we use. It's got MC4 connectors that are ready to go for the solar panel. This baby's watertight, and I've already got kind of the wiring run for it. We're going to dump it down through the ceiling. And the spot I'm going to put it is going to be this nice little flat zone here. So I'm going to clean it with a rubbing alcohol before we start drilling. And of course, we're going to rust coat and grommet just like we always do. But I want to show you something else. Number one, the lights. I have some scene lights here that were gifted to us by a good friend, Troy. If you're watching, thank you so much. We love you, buddy. Let's see if you can see them. There they are. Oh, crud. No, there they are. They're by Vision X. But how did I join them? I got these guys here. They're these little boxes. They are waterproof, and it just allows you to connect all the wires inside and cap them off. It's really convenient. I've got them all across the roof rack. And the thing I'm going to use to run these lights down, it's actually this nifty guy here. I think this is by Seaway. It's a different type of gland. It's a rubber core that you put the wires through, and it's got its own seal here. So you can definitely lap seal, but the reason I like this is because I don't need to lap seal. It's going to be watertight without the lap seal. And this thing is especially cool because I can expand it later. So I'm going to do one hole for now, but later I can go back and I can add Starlink on one side, or I can add light bar lights on the other side. I'm just going to go right in the middle for these scene lights here. But again, I think this is Seaway. Just look up marine grade gland on Amazon or wherever you shop parts. This thing is really, really nifty. All right, I'm going to set you guys up and start drilling. Here we are on the inside. This is the solar cable. We're looking from the inside here. This is the ceiling. It's actually terminating somewhere right here. So it's not too far out. Both of those glands are sitting like so. Our solar just runs down back into here, and it goes through the same conduit as the air conditioning cable back through and out to our power area. But I want to show you the scene lights. So these guys actually run back this way, and we have two options once we get to here. There is a nice pocket here where we can go through, or there's a big pocket there. I like to leave that open just in case, because to get to this would require taking all the wall panels off, taking overhead cabinets off, and ultimately pulling out all of the insulation that I'm going to have in here. So really having to restuff this isn't ideal. But this area back here, if you put your hand into this corner, you will feel a pretty sizable notch. It's like an inch wide by a half inch deep. And you can feed wires down through there out to the bottom. But again, I like to leave that as a last resort. God knows what we're going to add later. You have this vertical channel here, and you have it all the way in the front too. Believe it or not, you also have it here and here. So just about every one of these sections, you're going to have that vertical channel to run wires. Again, I like to use them as a last resort. I don't like to use them as a primary way of running wire. If you don't have capsules or If you have a solid wall, you know, it makes it really, well, let me rephrase that. If you have capsules or a solid wall, you can run your wires through here and everything's good and well. But if you have a full-size window, you don't have that luxury. That's when those vertical channels come in handy. That's where we run all the wiring if this area is going to be visible. Lucky for us, our trim rings are going to come out to here and kind of tuck all this away. So just to recap, DC-DC charging is done, shore power is completed, and solar gland is finished. We're going to move on to running all of the other wires throughout the van. Before I start moving these wires over, I want to mention something briefly. If you haven't ordered our wiring kit and you're doing your own wires, quick tip is label everything. Label, 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 label as much as you can. That helps a lot. The next thing, we've talked about this ad nauseum now. It's having wire loom, having the right wire. We have other videos for that. If you're curious, go check out our channel. I'd advise you look into that. But aside from the loom and having labels that'll help you out, it's so we're lucky we're using Victron systems, so we need these ferrules in place on the ends of our wires. It makes it a little easier, but if you're not doing it that way, cut your wires so you don't have strands of copper dangling, because if it gets caught in your insulation, it makes it kind of a pain in the butt to feed it through anything. That's just about the last tip. Now, the next 3 wires I have to feed all go over the ceiling. It sucks really bad because we already have the ceiling in. We usually do the wiring or the pre-wire before the ceiling's in, but because we had to film that video, you know, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place here. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to take all 3 of those wires that I'm going to run over, which are going to be my AC wire from the power system to our step area. We're going to put an outlet there. The second wire is going to be our main power line to our dimmer, and the third wire is going to be the overhead cabinet in the front, right behind the driver's seat, over the top to that same dimmer panel. So I'm going to wrap these guys together, feed it over the top, show you what it looks like when I'm done. Our wiring is all run where we want it, and now we're going back and tying it all up. And I wanted to show you guys this little thing we like to do here, and that is called leaving something, I think it's called the service loop. Now that's what they called it when I was at Sequoia doing this for the power systems, and certainly those service loops are a little smaller. You may ask yourself, Dimitri, why do you guys leave so much dang wire sticking out? Why so long? Why so much extra? Well, because we've been in this situation so many times where we just don't have enough, and it really stinks. So if all else fails, leave these longer. They're rated to be this long. That's how we design them to be. And we're going to leave this nice little service loop here so that if for some reason something changes and this wire needs to move a foot, we don't have to rip the whole build apart to rerun it. Moving right along, once all these wires are in, the next step in our process is to grab this guy. This is a Milwaukee 12-volt battery inside of a little, I don't even know what this thing is called. It's from Amazon. It's got an inline fuse holder here, so you can put any size fuse in here. I've got a 2.5 amp fuse because the puck lights are less than that. And so what I'm going to do now is go through and test every single one of these wires that are plugged into something and make sure I've got them wired to the right place and everything's working, because this part sucks to do when your walls are up. You don't want to wait to that step to do this. It's as easy as grabbing these waggos, flipping them on the ground, put them on the hot wire, and with a little bit of luck, we can make sure all of our circuits are working properly. Wiring all throughout the van is basically complete. We're moving on to this last section. I promised you I'd show you the Anderson connectors in a couple videos now. This is what they look like. Anderson connectors basically fit right into each other. They're identical. They're just kind of when you flip the other one upside down and plug them, the positives and negatives line up. And on the inside, you have these fittings that crimp together, rather like this, making a good connection. The size of this will vary depending on the voltage and amps that you're putting through this. One other little side note is to make sure you have a 30 amp fuse or breaker in line. This is the one we're going to use. It's going to live up in the ceiling, so I'm going to set this aside for now. I like these instead of fuses because instead of blowing, they just flip open, so if something happens, you can troubleshoot it and then reset, and you have to go out and get new hardware. Last little bit of safety, make sure you get shrink wrap. I learned a few things from the pros on how to properly crimp stuff. You can get an industrial pneumatic tool, but if you don't have the budget, you can pick up one of these guys. It's just a hand tool. You get different size chucks and dies in here, whether you're doing standard gauge or something a little different. Usually they come with all those different sizes. And the last part is going to be actually putting this together. Let me walk you verbally through the process, and then we'll get some shots of us doing it up close. We're basically fitting this into where it's supposed to go, and then I'm cutting the sleeve off and leaving maybe 1/8 of an inch sticking out. It's okay if there's a little wire sticking out. It's not good as if you have too much insulation and it's getting inside of here. And then once that's on, we're going to crimp it in place. We'll start at the back, and then we'll crimp the front. If there's any sharp edges, make sure to knock those down or grind them so that it doesn't cut through the heat shrink. And then last but not least, slide the heat shrink up to about this point in the front and shrink it down. A heat gun is best. You can also use a lighter if you're very careful. One other little side note for the pros out there, yes, you should have red heat shrink on the red cable. I don't have red heat shrink in this size at the moment, so I'm doing black on both. But without further ado, let's start crimping. Now, should be as easy as, there you go. All of our pre-wiring is done. To recap, the things that we've connected are going to be the Anderson connector up top, shore power down here, solar on the roof, another gland up top for our scene lights, DC-DC charging, as well as all of our wall wires. Just to quickly run you through what we did there, we've got our main power system living here, so we've got a rat's nest kind of bundled up and labeled here, have a reading light up top, overhead cabinet up front, we have another overhead cabinet here, and all of the ceiling and cabinet lights are run over to there where we have another power lead from our main. It's going to power our dimmers. Aside from that, the 110 volt cables are run over the top. We've got one coming down here that's going to go into the back of our box, and we're going to daisy chain off of that to one that's living inside our side step. There will be other wires added later. Some of these will include a wire from our cabinet or our power system to our refrigerator cabinet where a Blue Sea will live. We don't need to run those through the wall. We're just going to put them through the cabinets, as well as another 110 volt AC plug that's going to live over the kitchen. So that just about wraps up the wiring. If I could leave you with a few closing thoughts and key takeaways, it would be, number one, be safe, use the right wires. Tin and braided is the way to go. If you don't feel comfortable rating your own wires, have a professional do it. If you do feel comfortable but you need a little guidance, check out ABYC calculator. There's a ton of them out there. It's generally the American Boat Yacht something standard. That's the standard we go by. It's all marine grade tin and braided wiring for that. Number two, make sure you protect the wires. That's going to be that protective sheathing. Make sure the wires you buy have that extra insulating white coating on top of it. You've got wire loom over that. Heat shrink the wire loom at the end so it doesn't come undone. And last but not least, it's going to be the actual trim lock covering the metal. Anywhere that the wire's touching the metal, you want either trim lock, grommets, and if you can't do either of those, a plastic conduit like we did for the air conditioning cable will do just fine. The last closing thing is test everything. Just like we did with the air conditioner. You guys remember in this series earlier, we had a Max Air fan that arrived damaged. You want to test everything. Get yourself a little portable 12 volt battery or something like we have to test all of your lights, your switches, your S-bar heater, so that you don't have to go back and rip everything off just because you have a faulty circuit somewhere. So now that the walls are ready to go on, that'll probably be the next video in the series. I hope you found this useful. I hope you found it helpful. Please leave comments below if you want to see something specific or you want close-up shots as we continue on. If you guys didn't already know, we have a new Facebook community group started. There will be a link to that in the description as well. Just look up Serg Supply on Facebook, find us, share pictures of your build, your progress, or just ask questions. We're there, we're monitoring it, we're here to help, and more importantly, we're here to build a community. I want to thank you again for sticking around to the end of this very long, very unfun video. And before I forget, in case you were curious how long this took 2 guys, about 6 hours in total. Granted, we've done this a lot, so we move fast, but also we're filming along the way. So I would put aside a dedicated day, maybe a Saturday or Sunday, to get this done on your own. And with that, I will leave you guys. Thank you for watching this full video. As always, I appreciate it. Happy building.